sound wonderful. Yeah! I was asking Sherry if you can play it all the way through so we don't actually have to listen to Bill talk. Oh,
I want to hear you, Bill. I need that Holy Ghost. Thank you, Eddie.
now, you sound wonderful. Eddie and I have talked. Starting tomorrow night, the band is actually going to be down in the pit.
Yeah.
And
I'm only excited. Oh, no, I was too.
And that shouldn't be any kind of problem because, hey, we're not confident in singing, so that's fine. Tonight, I want to run the show pretty much fairly smoothly. I'm only looking for 4 days.
It works.
Tuesday,
Good deal.
Wednesday, Thursday, and this Saturday. Because I'm a rock star and I'm a whore and I need another show.
Yeah.
So I will be
I need money. So I want to do as much, obviously we'll stop and start where we need to pick stuff, but I want to do as much without stopping as possible, just so we get that flow going. Obviously, when we get the pictures in, it will change things again. Questions? I can't wait to hear you all sing. Great. I know. Okay. Shall we get started?
Okay. For seating lines, yeah. Sherry, I want you actually, Sherry, take right here. You want to have Stephanie at the tree.
Yeah, some of those songs are like the second song. Yeah. There are other songs inside that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just named
So you're going to be singing tenor. Going to be in front of you.
yes, it takes too long.
Cynthia, you're right here.
No.
Shonda, you're going to be right here.
Okay. The good news is you can snap me. So right next to Peter,
Oh, yeah, you're going to be right next to me. And I'll be right here. I forgot the tambourine. Just so you know, Brett, we have not done this song.
That was
yet.
not
This
the
is like the
time.
only song we haven't done.
Well, then you're sounding pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys tone it down just a bit? I don't think he can hear us
Yeah, we'll
until we get mic.
yeah, we'll bring our sound else too, but don't sing your voice down tonight because you don't have mics.
Well, now you tell girl.
I needed you to sing your voice out because we haven't sang our voice out 15 times already.
Okay.
All right.
But, the rest.
Okay, we open with.
I was gonna read that
Then
right
what
there
do
on
we
the
do?
Yeah.
His line.
Wait until the halftime break. From the time it goes to the top, it's starting at
Two.
halftime.
So I have a question. Do I have more time to get Rashonda? What happened? Should I get?
You need
more
to
time
start
time?
going down on your,
I'm in the miracle.
that's when you need to start going down. Because as soon as we do, then she needs to come right into her verse.
Okay.
So,
Ginger,
Yes, sir.
if you can come out earlier
Yes.
into the audience, you're
be
wandering
working
through the
there.
audience, so it doesn't look like you're just coming straight to her and saying, look, here's somebody, random. So compare it to all the other people who can't sing but are trying to sing with you.
Right.
And then,
So engage them more, get them to sing with you.
yeah,
Get them to
absolutely.
start clapping their hands.
Absolutely. As long
Okay.
as you're out here, come off the stage.
Got it.
And
Done.
don't pick Rabbi Harlan.
And what?
Don't choose Rabbi Harlan. He's not coming.
Okay. Amen.
But how many been to get a blessing tonight? Hallelujah! Turn the song next to you, Turn the person on the other side, tell them tonight is your night. Now put your hands together and help me That's one of the first songs my brother and I learned when we were little boys. My mother used to make us practice singing almost every day. I hated that then. Now I kind of treasure those moments. What we're going to do here in a little bit, We're going to sing a couple songs as soon as I get my breath. But my mother and my grandmother used to sing on Sunday night. I'm getting older now. I'm college educated. But I have not forgotten my roots or my Pentecostal upbringing, of which I don't apologize. You see, that's just the way we were raised. I remember the women used to wear the dresses up to the neck, down to the floor, down to the wrist, and always had their hair in a bun. The men used to always wear white walls, what we call white walls. When you went and got your hair cut, they'd shave around the ears, so you see the skin between your ears and your hair. And we used to call it white walls. Of course, we didn't have many black people that came to our church. You see, we were an oppressed people. Oppressed at home, oppressed on the job, didn't have much money, very little education. They used to call us hang on. Thank you, Eddie. We used to dance in the spirit. We used to fall out on the floor. Used to speak in tongues. They used to call us all kinds of stuff. They called us tongue talkers, holy rollers, healers, tongue talkers. I remember they used to bring toilet paper. Wow. That way when they foam at the mouth, they call it they were getting purged. And I used to say, Lord, oh God, please don't purge me. Please don't purge me. We were, God, I thought I had this all down. All right. Some of the old saints used to get up and testify. They always dressed like a name, rank, and a serial number. I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost on my way to heaven. Yeah. Great church of God. Lord, one old lady that I remember specifically.
I'm going to be on book for you.
Thank you.
Online.
Thank you. One old lady that I remember, after she get through doing her little testimony, then she'd always go, God gave me a song in the night. And she starts singing. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Wait. Don't put his hand, had the wrong song.
Can you
Oh.
start?
Yeah, I gotta keep in a tune.
Whatever you say.
Right, but it's gotta hit. Just as soon as I say she used to sing.
She used to sing.
Never been a boom.
Got it.
Oh.
I'm gonna go a little bit right before that.
All right, let me go back just a little bit. Okay. The old saints in our church used to get up and testify, and they always testified the same thing, and they'd read it off like a name, rank, and a seal number. I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and all my way to heaven. And remember the great church of God. I remember one old lady, after she would say that and do her testimony, and then she go, God gave me a song in the night, and she would sing. Pass somebody else. I'm getting that blessing tonight. I'm getting a miracle tonight. Come on, tell me. I want you to say something after me. I'm not sick. I'm well. I'm not poor. I'm rich. I'm not dead. I'm not making this stuff up. This is how I was raised. Yeah, trust me, tell me now, we didn't have any place to go. We didn't get high on drugs, we didn't get high on alcohol. All we had was Jesus. We couldn't watch television. Most of us didn't have television, no one did. Didn't want anybody to know it. My mom used to preach about television from Hollywood. We didn't have any.
We didn't get high on drugs.
All we had was the Holy Ghost. You see, we were raised what people call Pentecost. You know what I'm talking about. Now, Pentecost has four staples to it. First was hell. And anybody didn't agree with us and believe with us, you were going there no matter how nice you were. Then we had heaven. Now, very few people was going to go there, including very few of us when we looked around. Then we had the physical return of Jesus. But what that was is, we were trying to hold on to our faith and hope that Jesus would come to the sky and bring us up and get us out of this mess. Then we had the gifts of the Spirit. Now the gifts of the Spirit was healing, prophecy, miracles, and the word of knowledge. The word of knowledge was the preacher coming out usually and calling you out and telling you things only you and God would know. What about that, Jack?
We were an emotional people.
We were an emotional people. Hang on, Eric.
In everything we did.
Oh, everything we did in church services. On the social ladder of Christian society, Christianity, the social ladder of Christianity, you have like Catholics, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Lutherans, all the way down to the bottom, you have Pentecost.
Can you get nice chords for each of those denominations and then something important for Pentecost?
Yes, absolutely.
Try that again, Bill.
All right. We were an emotional people. Everything we did. You see, on the social ladder of Christianity, you had like Catholics, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Lutherans, all the way down to the bottom, you had Pentecost. I like that.
You're paraphrasing, but you're getting it all.
Well, I won't be paraphrasing. Tonight, you're going to hear the gospel according to Kennison. You're going to hear the story of my preaching family.
The Bible.
Huh?
Gospel. What in the Bible?
Is that what we do that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't have it until we get to the let's tell you the story of the gospel of Kennison. I thought I did this one. The next one is, let us begin. Let's see where we're at right now. Bible, open it up. Let's step into the Bible. Let's begin our story. The gospel of Kennison. You want to do it up here, though?
but it's right after he got COVID.
We were an emotional people. Everything we did on the social ladder of Christianity. Sometimes God don't like me doing this stuff. On the social ladder of Christianity, you have Catholics, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Lutheran, and all the way down the bottom, you have Pentecost. Tonight you're going to hear the story of my preaching family and of the inner workings of the ministry. Let's go to the gospel according to Tennyson. Let's go straight. Then we'll go straight to the family. Yeah. Let's go straight to the family. To say that my family was unusual, special, and unconventional is an understatement. My dad was 19 years older than my mother. My older brother was born severely mentally handicapped and legally blind. Richard, I put Richard in there?
Yeah.
All right, my older brother Richard, yeah, was born severely mentally handicapped and legally blind. I fell out of a car at 3 years old going 50 miles an hour. My brother Sam was hit by a truck. And then you have my brother Kevin, who was pretty fairly normal, and he didn't stick out much as the rest of us. What do you got now, Dad?
My dad wasn't raised in church.
My dad wasn't raised in church. His mother died at 5, and my grandfather was an atheist. Even the way my father was converted was strange. He was in St. Louis, Illinois.
Top of middle.
God.
Why? How do you react to an atheist?
Jesus, Lord, help you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Okay.
Oh, help. Oh, help.
I can't hear him right now.
All right, we'll do that over.
I didn't hear him say that.
I can't even hear
We
him.
can't really.
My dad wasn't raised in church.
Okay.
His mother died when he was 5, and my grandfather was an atheist.
Oh, Lord, now, oh, Lord.
That's good. I like that. I like that. Even the way my father was converted
My God.
was strange. One night on a date in East St. Louis, Illinois, middle of a bad rainstorm, he walked his date to the door, and as he was returning back to his car, running in the rain, he fell in a ditch. As he was getting up out of this ditch, standing before him, he said was the most handsome man he had ever seen, completely dry. The man looked at him and said, "Do you have a job to do?" Well, it scared my dad to death. And he ran and jumped in his car, but he committed his life to God. That was the beginning of the preaching Kennisons. My father owned two dance halls, which they call nightclubs today, and a dump truck business. Some preacher had told him that he couldn't serve God and have money, so he sold his businesses and bought an orphanage and a church, or built an orphanage and a church in Marysville, Illinois. After a couple of
He actually joined the...
yeah, he then joined up with the Assembly of God organization. After a couple of years, he decided to get out of the Assembly of God, not realizing that his property now belonged to the Assembly of God because he had joined up with it. Something he was bitter about the rest of his life.
It was also the first time that he
It was also the first time that he realized that religion was a business. He was so charismatic that the Church of God organization out of Cleveland, Tennessee asked him to be their national evangelist. So
While preaching a revival in
while
Peoria,
preaching a revival in Peoria, Illinois, he met my mother. After a short courtship, my mother, and my grandmother went to Niagara Falls and got married.
eloped.
Huh?
Eloped.
Eloped to Niagara Falls and got married. My dad was 35 years old. My mother was date and their first boyfriend. Come on, Jack.
My mother came from a family of 7.
My mother came from a family of 7 sisters and 3 brothers. She was born in the middle of the Depression, sickly as a child and a teenager. All of her siblings, including her, were very, very good looking, and they could all sing. Without a voice teacher or a music teacher, they could all sing. And a lot of them could play the piano and play the guitar. But one day on the way home from school at the age of 14, the Lord spoke to her heart and told her she had a gift of playing the piano. All right. I know that. I'm working out there.
Coming out here.
Stop dancing. I know.
Okay.
Don't worry. But stop. Just
Right, so just
concentrate. Or move. But if you move, you might fit.
Okay. All right. At the age of 14, on the way home from school one day, the Lord spoke to my mother's heart that she had a gift of playing the piano. She went home and started teaching herself to play. 2 years later, she met my father, and what they do, Jack?
2 years later, she met and married my dad. She was a very talented piano player and could sing the best.
Eventually, she met my father, and they got married, and she was a exceptionally good piano player, and couldn't play anything by sheet music, but could play anything by simply listening to it.
For the next 8 years,
For the next 8 years, they traveled back and forth across the country, preaching the gospel, until finally,
so after having 2 sons and the third one on the way,
yeah, I live it. Okay, yeah. After 2 sons and a third on the way, my father asked the Church of God organization to give him a church to pastor so he could raise his children.
they were given the largest church.
I was paused.
Dramatic pause.
Gave him a church to pastor. So they did. In Wapato, Washington, the largest church in the southwest or northwest sector, just a suburb outside of Yakima, Washington. In just a short time, my father ran such big crowds that he broke every one of their attendance and financial records that they'd ever had in this church. At the age of 4, now there.
Life was good.
Oh yeah, is that before that?
I left the updated.
Oh, you got it. All right, life was good. We lived next door to the bank president. We had money. My dad was driving a Hudson and wearing a bow tie. But at the age of 4, one of the very first memories I have of my life had a tremendous impact on my life. I remember my father preaching, and I was sitting in the front row of the church, and his message, and I even remember his message, and it's where Jesus took his disciples into the garden to pray, and as he
Yeah.
I even remember the message that he preached. It was where Jesus took his disciples and went into the garden to pray. And he went off and he came back and they were all asleep. And he said, could you not tarry for 1 hour? Then he went a little, the Bible says he went a little farther into the garden. Well, his message was that they had not went far enough, the church had not went far enough, and the Church of God organization had not went far enough. Well, at the end of the service, as was the protocol, my father asked the guest minister to get up and say a few words, which happened to be a guy named S.W. Goff. He was the former pastor of this church and was a state overseer now. He got up And he said, Brother Kennison preached a good message, but he went too far. And with the power invested in him by the Church of God organization, he declared this pulpit vacant. Men in the church jumped up to come down and whip this guy that had just fired their beloved pastor. What does my dad do? He picks up a chair and protects the man that just fired him. The next day, or is the next day or next night? Next night, just like a thief out the Godfather. Stop it!
Stop with
When
the
he
juice,
says, I declare this pulpit vacant, no nothing. Okay? Once he starts talking about his dad protecting the guy that fired him, he started that.
But now, how does that correspond or coincide with what the theme of Godfather?
That doesn't start until I go, just like a scene out of The Godfather. And then they all start humming. Not that beat. You're supposed to hum the theme of The Godfather. Hum. So my father asked the visiting minister to get up and say a few words, which was the protocol. Well, the visiting minister was S.W. Galt, the former pastor of this church and now the state overseer. He got up and he said, Brother Kennison preached a good message, but he went too far. And I declare this pulpit vacant. The next night, I remember there in the parsonage, just like a scene out of The Godfather. Just like a scene out of The Godfather. A black sedan pulled up in front of the house.
Hold on. Give the part where your father is protecting him.
Oh, now need that?
Yeah,
Well, I had the first time.
I know. Silence.
All if we can get just the ladies up there and
Yeah, here we are. All right.
ready. Who's are like real, but real light.
Well, they got to know that it's The Godfather.
Right.
Let's go back to,
Hold on, I need to know the theme.
No, there's 47. I don't know.
okay.
And separate the notes from that too.
At the end of the message, as was the protocol, my father asked for the visiting minister to say a few words. The visiting minister was a man named S.W. Galt. He was the former pastor of this church and now was the state overseer.
He was jealous.
Huh?
He was jealous.
Oh, yeah. He was jealous of what my father had accomplished in a short time. He got up and he said, Brother Kennison had preached a good message, but he had went too far. And with the power invested in him by the Church of God organization, he declared this pulpit vacant. Men in the church jumped up.
He had just fired my dad on the spot, several men in the church.
No, I'm really not getting the right back on the spot. He just fired my father on the spot. Men in the church jumped up to come down and physically whip this man because they just fired his beloved pastor. What does my dad do? He picks up a chair and protects the man that had just fired him. The next night, there at the parsonage, I remember a a black sedan, just like a scene out of The Godfather. I remember a black sedan pulling up out front, and four.
Okay, I'm sorry, one more time, we're with you.
All
A
right.
little
scene
beat
out of The
after,
Godfather.
just like a scene from The Godfather. Beat, then they.
All right, ready to do it again? All right. The next night, there,
Thank you.
gotta sound like it.
the next night there in the parsonage, I looked out the window and it was just like a scene out of The Godfather. Really needs to be better than that.
It will be.
Okay.
It will, don't worry about it, it will.
Just like a scene out of The Godfather. A dark sedan pulled up out front, four men in overcoats and fedoras got out of the car, came up to the door, and asked my father to take a ride with him. I remember as he walked out to the car with them, I was looking out the window, just about to turn 5, and I remember yelling and crying, "Please don't hurt my daddy! Don't hurt my daddy!" Well, after a while, they brought him back to the house. He came in, my mother asked him, "So what'd they tell you?" He said, "We have a week to get out of the parsonage, and I can never preach in another Church of God church." For the second time, my father had been screwed over by a religious organization. From Wapata, Washington, living next door to the bank president, to Peoria, Illinois, living in the projects, same projects as Richard Parker. Am I there? You're looking all fuzzy.
As I grew older, I realized that my
Oh,
dad.
okay, all right. I think you didn't know. For the second time, my dad had just been screwed over by a religious organization. As I grew older, I realized that my dad was never afraid of anyone or anything. So I knew there was more to the story. But every time I knew there was more to the story, but every time I asked him, he always gave me the same answer. Until my last conversation with him when he was alive. I was driving from Tulsa to Rockford, Illinois to give Sherry her engagement ring. Or Chicago, to give her her engagement ring. When I stopped and visited my father in Decatur, Illinois. We spent the entire night up talking. My father was my best friend, and I idolized him. We spent the entire night up talking. Near daylight, he told me that he wanted me to preach his funeral, that the Lord had awakened. Let's start that over. All right? Let's go to, I was driving from Tulsa to Chicago to give Sherry, my soon-to-be wife, her engagement ring. When I stopped to see my dad in Decatur, Illinois, he was my best friend and I idolized him. When I came in and surprised him, we stayed up all night talking. But near daylight, he said that the Lord had awakened him a couple weeks before that, and said he was going to take him before long, and wanted me to preach his funeral. After some reluctance, I agreed to preach it. 6 weeks later, returning from Pennsylvania, in a convention, he died. But in that last conversation, I asked him what was really said in that car when I was 4 years old. He told me that if he ever preached at another Church of God church, they would harm him and his family. Now that, my friend, is true love and compassion, the good old religious way.
Amen.
Well, from Wapata, Washington to Peoria, Illinois, from living next door to the bank president to living in the same projects as Richard Pryor. We didn't meet Richard Pryor until years later. Sam was in college. And we moved to Peoria because that was where my mother's family lived. And she had had a nervous breakdown from what had happened in Wapata, Washington. And my dad once again began to preach, but refusing to ever join a religious, he remained independent, refusing to ever join a religious organization again. I didn't like church. I didn't like like church and I dislike God even more. I never forgot about the Sudan and the religious mafia when I was 4 years old. But I really enjoyed listening to my dad preach. Dad was a great hellfire and brimstone preacher.
Yes, Lord.
There was a company that was searching for a valuable aid.
Right, all right.
And while they found this egg over a cliff, but there wasn't, a man was too heavy to lower over and get the egg. But standing there watching him was a little boy. Hey, they asked the little boy, can we lower you over there if you get this egg for us? The boy said, no, I'm too afraid. He said, we'll give you anything you want, if we can just lower you over there with the rope and get the egg. The little boy refused. Until finally, they said, what would it take for you to be able to us to lower you over? Why, he said, if my father has a hold of the other end of the rope. My friend, I want to tell you something tonight. God, He's wanting to my friend, you don't have to go through life afraid. You don't have to face life's trouble and turmoils alone. You don't have to face life's battles by yourself. You can get a hold of the greatest treasure in the world. Wants to hold the rope as you pray the blips in your life. Let God walk with you through the path of life's uncertainties. He wants to hold the rope with you and there in your life. In your life, in God's life, and we look, and He will hold the rope and hold the rest of your life. I love you now. I want to tell you about a young soldier from the mountains of West Virginia. He got out of the service and he came back home and he took the train. And the train, what? I want to tell you about a young soldier that returned. He lived higher than the mountains of West Virginia. The trail from that little town to his family house was dangerous under good conditions, but treacherous under the conditions that they had. As he got off the train, he looked around. No one was there to meet him, except his little dog. The dog had grown up. He started following Rusty through the paths, through the paths of that mountain. As he got close, he saw the lights of his home. When they saw him, they started thinking, how did you make it? You couldn't get down there. The weather was too bad. How did you make it home? The young soldier rose and said, I don't Rusty. Let me home. They got real quiet, started weeping. Finally they told him, Rusty had died. 6 months later, one left. My dear friend, as you travel through this dangerous walk of life, you need someone to lead you through every twist and every turn. The devil's always trying. Waiting to see the lights of
Well, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we'll have a mic. All right, let me do the last part, and then we can do it. And I'm going to flip in those then my dad would begin to sing. That's what we gotta do.
Right.
But
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
cut that.
Huh?
We cut the part about then my dad will begin to sing. You just start.
Oh, okay, so we don't even do that. So you're gonna start singing at, to that place of safety and comfort.
Safety and comfort, in the place of safety and comfort.
Bill,
Take it easy.
just take it easy, stop
Yeah,
screaming.
because you won't.
It's like yelling at you! All right. But just like Rusty, let that young soldier home. The Lord is waiting for you. He's waiting to lead you to the lights of that heavenly city. To lead you home.
No, stop for a minute. What I want is, during this last little sermon,
Okay.
start getting really into this story individually, okay? So that by the time you sing, you have picked yourselves up and are ready.
Okay.
So,
Well, that'd be just, just one,
absolutely.
one at a time, you're getting excited, you're getting, and you
really
really
listen, you know, doesn't, you know, hallelujah, roasting. Well,
what they would do at our church when we had a choir, and different ones back inside, they get up, they'd be going, oh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Don't feel rooted to the chair.
Try not to laugh in their faces.
Yeah, can we move the little one to the background?
We hide real back.
But yeah, feel free. Every now and then I'm hearing, especially you, wonderful,
Yeah, the man.
chiming in, react to these, the sermons especially. But throughout this last
That's a
one,
good idea,
that's what I
too.
want you getting up.
That's a good idea, pants are a good idea. Those are big, man. All right.
Okay. So what
Ready
we're
now?
doing-
Okay, then we're gonna start singing that safety and comfort. I'm gonna start that paragraph over. The elderly mom and dad got quiet and started crying.
Yes, yes.
Then they finally told him that Rusty had died 6 months ago. My dear friend, as you travel through this dangerous waterway, you need someone to lead you through every twist and turn. But just like that little Rusty and that young soldier home, the Lord is waiting for you. Waiting to lead you to the lights of that city. To lead you home to that place of safety and comfort. And tenderly, Jesus is calling. Oh, sinner, come home. I don't know what we're gonna do twice. What was our rehearsal?
I think that's one.
Just once, all right. Come home. Then Dad would tell the congregation that the Lord might come before he got through with this altar call. He might come before you take your next breath. He'd tell them, I'm going to count to 3. Then he'd preach a little bit. Then he'd yell, 1! Just try to punch that little word in there, all right? Get it in. After getting 1!
Instead of the prolonged one, can we make it real sharp?
Yeah, it's supposed to be short, I thought. Ready for your notes? All right, ready?
Okay, ready? Go ahead.
Then Dad would tell the congregation the Lord might come before I finish this altar call. He might come before you take the next breath. I'm going to count to 3, and I want every person that wants to make heaven their home to get out of their seat and run out of this altar. You shout, 1! Then the congregation would put their hands up. Then once he saw him begin to relax a little bit, then he would unexpectedly yell, 2! Then they would inch over next to the aisle. Get ready to make the rampage down to the altar. Then he would preach a little bit more, and then right at the right moment, he yelled, 3! And then we'd get up and run down to that hall, we'd shine in that hall, but that wasn't the end. That wasn't the end. You see, now, we had the tarry for the Holy Ghost. That usually consisted of a couple old ladies with about half their teeth, bad breath, and just spraying all over. One on one side, we had a pretty soon, after something's all short, you start battling. Well, they were glad to tell you, hold on, honey, that's not it. You don't get no Holy Ghost like that.
Okay. When he says, hold on, honey.
Gotcha. Hold on. When he stops then? Yep. All right. One going to let go, the other telling you to hang on. You got to get smart and stop babbling like you were speaking in tongues. Well, if you spoke in tongues too quickly, the ladies would gladly tell you, hold on, honey. You don't get no Holy Ghost like that. We'll tell you when you got it. Amazingly, we fall for this every Sunday night. And they also used to cast demons out. Usually, if someone had a pain, it was a demon. So the church would gather around.
This is what I want. When he says we have I love the beat. That's great.
So the church together, my dad also used to cast demons out.
Cast demons out. So with that beat, I want to move it with that beat. And actually, up there very, very slowly. If you're there, okay, so we go.
My dad also used to cast demons out of people.
Start moving on.
Usually, if someone had an ache for a pain, they would assume it was a demon. So the church would gather around them, and Dad would give us all the instructions. First, we had to plead the blood of Jesus. We would do that by singing our chorus.
So when he says,
Now, this is where we end up a cappella.
no, this is the one we modeled.
Okay, all right.
We were gonna do it like 3 times, is that cool, at least 3 times? To modulate 3 different keys. Yeah, we're gonna do all that.
I feel some demons right over here right now.
So, you start moving before you start singing. So as he's doing a little introduction.
Well, you're like your time's over. When my dad also cast demons out of people.
That's-
Usually if someone had an ache or pain, they would assume it's a demon. Then, so the church would come and gather.
As soon as
Yeah, but
it's-
they're gathering before. that.
Okay, all right.
So, you start moving on my dad.
On my dad, he's
Yeah.
a pastor.
Start moving, you don't need to move forward yet. I think you start moving, and then you enter the singing part.
You can do that deal all the way up.
So you can move around and fly for singing.
Okay, you guys got that? Got it?
It starts off with this beat, but then it slows down to all the blood.
Yes.
Okay.
After we break, it will actually totally shift the tempo at that point.
Okay, cool. And then you each know what parts you've got, your body parts. What were they doing? Arms?
Leg,
I was thinking that Friday.
arm, and foot. Leg, arm, and foot.
His arm.
Your arm?
Ginger's foot.
And your
I'm the arm.
arm, your leg, arm, foot.
Foot, okay, so let's make sure you're right upstage of him,
Okay,
middle,
okay.
you're over on this side, and Ginger, you stay over, Ginger, you stay over here on this side. Okay, so,
Then you all just fill that.
yeah, everyone else will do it.
I think we missed something.
She'll also. Some of our outfits.
All right. All right, well, let's all go back to start, so we do this right.
Yeah,
My dad also used to cast demons out of people. Usually if someone had an ache or pain, they would assume it was a demon. So the church would gather around now and then and give us all the instructions. First, we have to plead the blood of Jesus, and we would do that by singing a chorus.
Can we start that over, please? I'm sorry.
My dad used to cast demons out of people. Even if someone had an ache or pain, they would assume it was a demon. So the church would gather around and give all of us the instructions. First, we have to plead the blood of Jesus.
I'm sorry, I thought we were redoing that whole scene.
No, he just.
I bind every demon, every spirit of death. Where you come from? I release these lies.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, you're
Don't say anything that's
My dad also used to cast demons out of people. You if someone had an ache or a pain, they would assume it was a demon, so the church would get around and give us all the instructions. First, we had to plead the blood of Jesus, and we do that by singing a chorus. demon came out, he'd be looking for a new home to live in. Which we'd only pretend to, because when this bad boy came out, we wanted to be able to see where he was going. Sometimes it would start in someone's.
It's in my life!
Yeah, they were delivered. Someone else, yeah. And when they were delivered, it's someone else.
Try something.
Well, I got to do a different thing on the very first one, because I'm actually almost saying what they're saying.
Yeah,
I'm trying to outstream the band.
yeah.
Sometimes it would start in,
Start.
would
Well,
start.
I like the fact that you say sometimes it starts in the leg. Then
Someone laid
you
it
know,
over, oh, it's in my leg, it's in my leg.
it's in my leg, it's in my leg, it's in my arm, it's in my foot. I want you all to go nuts at this point. Pick your favorite body part. And I mean, you don't even have to do it. But
Keith, that's funny. That's funny, Keith.
That's funny.
yeah.
You know who's going to be the hardest one to do
Seriously.
Yeah.
And number one is okay, let's go.
All right, listen up. I don't want to be your
Number
hard.
one is a definite statement. It's in my leg.
It's in my arm.
It's in my arm. It's in my foot. And then take it, whatever, it's wherever. It's in there. It's right there. It's there. And keep it going. And
So you want to pick out one?
Yeah. And
All right,
keep it going back and forth.
in
Keep
your
picking
hand,
different
all right.
things. I mean, it could be.
In your
it's
bag?
not picky. You know.
It's in the butt.
Can it come down to the organ?
And
Can it go down to the music pit and the organ? Can I tell the same thing? The organ!
no, that kills the joke for later. Sorry.
Yeah, really. We do have kids who love the organ later.
So, let them go. And I want these things to kind of building. Let them go. I'm thinking maybe. Okay? And then, I want you guys to turn this to them. And go. And with
That's good.
You're all
As soon as he turns around, just like tell him to stop
All
working.
right, you guys got to figure out the what order you're going. We're going to have good talk over each other.
So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8 lines. We have 8 in line.
8, 9, okay, 8, 9, perfect.
Right now, we'll just stop with Pete. When they're here, we'll do it that way.
Great, okay,
All right.
let's try that again. Keep the music a little low right
We
now.
just finished the blood.
Okay.
And then we were told to close our eyes, because when this demon came out, he'd be looking for a new home to live in. Which we only pretended to close our eyes, because when this bad boy came out, we wanted to be able to see where he was going. Well, sometimes it would start in someone's leg. You know, I don't remember any doctors, attorneys.
Wait, you got one more, something about finishing this.
Oh, yeah. This would continue until the demon was tired of going from one appendix to the other and would just leave. You know, I don't really remember.
And all of you are exhausted at that point,
Really?
just get back
I'm
here.
just going to get back to you. You know, I don't remember any doctors, attorneys, engineers, and any doctors. What I remember were workers from Caterpillar, unemployed, and the illiterate people. I'm not making fun of these people, but that was the people that attended our church. The sick people came hoping to get well. The poor people came hoping to get rich. The old people came because they didn't know how much longer they had. They just wanted to make sure everything would be all right. their chairs. Well, different ones got up and they were talking about death. One said they were homesick for heaven. Another said they were glad Jesus would be waiting for them so they wouldn't have to cross over alone. And yet another talked about a reunion with their loved ones in a Pentecost. But there was a man that was in the service that none of us knew, and that always made us suspicious. But he had had too much to drink, and he stood up from his seat weeping. He said these testimonies had really touched him. And he pulled out a gun from his belt and said, all you folks that are homesick for heaven, who wants to go first? He was willing to help these people out. But I've never seen a group of people fall on the floor so fast in my life. Just like Christians. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. Through all of this, we learn commitment. But it's pretty easy to be committed when you believe your entire eternity depends on it. Well, after 2 years of marriage, my mom gave birth to a cute little boy named Richard. He was a beautiful baby with a head full of white hair. The problem was, it didn't seem like he was developing normally. He didn't walk until he was 2 years old, and it seemed as if he was extremely clumsy. Most of the time, when Mom and Dad would put a glass or a plate in front of him, he'd accidentally knock it in the floor, and they would spank him, they would slap his hands or spank him because they thought he was doing it on purpose. He eventually had one eye that became so extremely crossed, so they took him to a doctor. That was rare, because preachers, they thought all they had to do was pray for us. Also, we usually couldn't afford to go to a doctor anyway. The news was horrifying. Richard was mentally handicapped so badly that it was very difficult for him to retain any knowledge. He was uncoordinated and was legally blind. The nerve was totally dead in the straight eye, and his crossed eye, his good eye, tested at 20/400. That meant that with his good eye, he could basically see light. Still, my parents never considered having him committed to a state institution at that time. They thought he'd be all right. It would just take a little longer for him to learn. Well, at 9 years old, they took him to see Dr. Milton Litters in Peoria, Illinois. His diagnosis and recommendation were not good. Richard had not gotten any better, and Dr. Litters recommended that they place Richard into a state institution. Dr. Litters said that Richard would never be able to retain much knowledge, would have several breakdowns because he could not compete with his brothers, would probably harm himself because he had very little coordination, and would essentially be blind the rest of his life. My parents felt the best thing to do was to commit him. They were signing all the papers, but when they got to the release of the death certificate, Dr. Litters explained it by signing the release that they would not be notified when he died because he would belong to the state. The reality shook them so badly that they decided to keep him and care for him. They brought him back home, and it seemed like a complete family again. I remember Richard not saying anything, going to our bedroom and singing one of the 3 songs he knew. to living in the church that my dad pastored, I mean, we literally remodeled Sunday school rooms and made living quarters. We lived in an old Methodist church with 24 rooms. At the age of 13, Richard could not spell his name. He could not count to 10. He could not tie his own shoes. Richard was so handicapped that he didn't ride the short bus to school. He rode in a state-funded taxi that picked him up and brought him back home. He went to what they called an ungraded class, where they would teach him how to feed himself and barely get by. We wouldn't bring him downstairs for Sunday school because he was too disruptive, but we would bring him down for the service, and he would sing. And he could sing good. Richard could retain very little knowledge, but somehow he could remember the words and melodies to a couple songs. Almost every service when it got quiet, Richard would stand up at the pew and would sing, "Shine on me, shine on me, let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Shine on me, Jesus. Shine on me, Jesus. Let the light from your lighthouse shine on me. One Sunday morning, Mom went upstairs to bring Richard down for the service. As she got upstairs, Richard was brushing his crew-cut haircut. She told Richard to come downstairs with her so that she could begin service. She was our piano player and organ player, and church couldn't start without her. Richard replied, "An angel was here and told me I was healed." My mom responded by telling Richard, "Quit messing around, come on, let me take you downstairs." Richard told her to test him. "Test my bad eye." Well, Mom did, and Richard could see. I remember Richard coming downstairs, and for the first time he was able to really see what his mother and father looked like.
Amen.
See what his brothers looked like.
Wow.
And we had some church.
Glory to God.
From then on, Richard started learning that even though he was only 2 years older than me, we graduated high school together. The head of that school board and the person that handed us our diploma was Dr. Milton Litters, the same doctor that had recommended that he be placed into a state institution. A couple weeks after graduation, Richard asked me to take him to Dr. Litters' office. When we walked in, Richard asked him what would be the most difficult job that someone in his condition could do. Well, after thinking about it for a moment, Dr. Litters said that probably being a barber. That person would have to be able to retain knowledge, would have to be able to see well, and would have to be coordinated. Richard went to barber college and got a state license, but he did not cut one head of hair professionally. He did frame the license and presented it to Dr. Litters, telling him the next time he saw a child like him to remember his case. Shortly thereafter, Richard entered the ministry and went to British Honduras on a missionary trip. He became the most exciting evangelist I have ever known. Many company experts say my brother Sam was in the top 5 of all-time stand-up comedians. But the real star of our family was my brother Richard.
Okay.
That's for sad.
Okay, first thing.
So, here's my feeling.
All right?
Since you guys really aren't involved much in the second act, I don't want to worry about that time. Okay? It's the first time that we're all working together.
Oh, you want to do second act?
No,
Okay, that's fine.
no, unless you want to say
No.
one moment, then you and I.
Unless you want to do the songs, they have two songs. It's up to you.
Yeah,
All right, all
that's
right,
it.
all right.
I do want to talk about a couple things though.
Okay.
Number one, you got into it, and then now that you tell me that the first song you hadn't really worked yet, you gotta have a lot more fun with the songs. I need to see it in the faces. So, really think about what you're thinking. When Bill comes in on the soldier, what I really like is for you to find space in that song near the end when you just stop. I don't want the song to finish, okay?
You want
You're
the choir
in-
to finish it?
You are into it, you are totally into it, until you get up here and see the picture of the four brothers. And I want you to just kind of lose the track of what you were doing.
All right.
Get into the picture, and just stand there and look at it. And then I want all of you, at your own time, to realize our lead singer's not singing anymore. And look at him, and just like one by one fall out of it, and just let it peter out. Okay, so then we have total silence at that point. And then Bill, turn around and explain, or talking to the picture at that point.
Yeah.
So once everything's stopped, give it a couple beats, and then my brothers and I grew up with that music, okay? Let everyone in the audience say what's happening,
Okay.
okay? That work for all of you?
Question.
Yeah.
Does that mean a volume fade for us?
Yes. I want, at that point, and it's the same kind of thing. Once you realize I'm losing my choir, you can be confused by it.
Oh,
I want it all to be a sense of, this is not what we rehearsed. We were gonna do a big number here.
Got it.
Got it? Okay.
Go back in, so I know what I'm doing.
Oh,
So I'm gonna come up here.
Yeah,
Once I get up here,
You're
I'm gonna quit
you're singing, no, not necessarily once you're up here, you can be out here going on with your song. At some point in it near the end, and I want you to kind of decide when that's gonna be. At that point, you turn around, you can even turn around and look at that. And all of a sudden, it's not stained glass up there anymore, it's your brother. Once you turn and see that, just stop.
Okay.
Mid-sentence, mid-line, mid-word, if you want, you know? Just let it stop.
Okay.
And then once you stop, little by little, they're gonna peter out. And when they totally stop, when everything here stops, that's when you talk.
Okay. So
Okay?
saying that you'll be controlling that. All right. All right.
Okay?
Yep.
In the beginning, you're directing a lot of your lines to the choir, which I like. Just don't do it as much.
Okay.
Use it sparingly, but use them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Choir. When Bill's going through the whole sermon about repeat what I say, I'm not rich, I'm poor, I'm not sick, I'm healthy.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Pick ones that you want. Can be one of you, can be two of you at a time. Maybe one of his lines strikes all of you. You do it together. That's fine. But definitely,
Yeah, but I'll be.
the audience
But
may
they're
not
probably
do
not
it.
gonna do it.
They might. We've got enough supporters here. But we don't want to bank on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you start doing it, they'll start doing it.
Y'all know what we're talking about?
Yes.
All right, when I'm going, first I'll tell them, tell somebody tonight is my night. I'm come for a healing tonight. I'm here for tonight. I bless you tonight. Then I go repeat after me.
Yeah, and even at the part
I mean, I
that
did it
tells
quick
somebody
tonight,
tonight, you're for healing.
I'm here for a healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Really get into
Yeah.
it. You are the congregation, okay? And you're all, and that goes for you guys too.
Yep.
You could be doing it too. Question. When everyone comes up to get rid of the demon, the song is so good,
Yeah, it is good.
it's breaking up the momentum of healing, getting the demon out. What I'm wondering is, you cut the introduction to the song. You cut the thing about,
He gives us instructions, and we start bleeding the blood, and we did that by singing.
by singing, cut that one.
Okay?
Just go right into, we start hearing it's in my leg, and then go through that whole thing. Once you do your line about finally the demon would be exhausted from going from one extremity to the other, and you go, then we put the song in as you're walking back to your seats.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna.
I think it's a nice ending
So,
to that whole
it's,
thing.
okay, so move it. When he says, my dad used to have some demons, right?
Yeah.
And then,
So the music's still playing,
Right?
the beat, and you're still moving up and doing all of this stuff.
So we're gonna move all the blood down to the bottom.
Finally,
To
finally.
the appendix.
Yeah.
That's finally.
Right there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
You got
Like
that?
that, I'll have to do it for
Yes.
life, or, script tomorrow night. Because I know there's things I'm saying that's not in there.
Yeah, that'd be
But
good.
I have my, that I can run it
He's
off.
still gonna say clean the blood and all that stuff.
No.
And then-
He's gonna cut that line about pleading with blood.
Okay,
So
so the
let's
church
go.
we have around them, he's gonna keep that right?
Yeah.
And God would, and all that, give all of us.
The instruction.
Cut it from there.
Cut from that point on. And then we go right on to this beat.
Then we were told to close our eyes then. Got it?
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
And then at the end of that, then you start singing.
There's, okay.
So I think the transition musically will be easier for
Yeah,
you too.
yeah.
Yes.
The beat going.
Yes.
Okay.
Getting that momentum. See that,
Okay. Okay, Eddie,
Yes.
I'm confused. Are you Richard, the two Richard songs? And
Yes.
so how, Mr. Down here?
Right, I'm going to sneak to my chair. Exactly. No, I'm gonna sneak up. I mean, it's gonna be black, but I'll sneak in that chair somehow. But from Walk With Me, I'm assuming it's from down there. Or this is what we're thinking, could we
So my dad.
somehow, I don't know, like,
You're gonna stop
what
at
is your
instruction.
Okay, have instructions, give us instructions.
I think the same person, number one, needs to sing both Walk With Me and you sound great.
I raise that
Can we now move to the piano countryman? All right.
Not really, because Walk With Me, no, not really.
Walk with me, we can do that as a trio.
Yeah.
So you can get up here for that. I think it's important that Richard is in the same seat for both songs.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay, so if you can get up there before that, stubbornly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, final thing for the band. For the most part, I think you need to bring it way down. I'm not just talking volume. I think what's happening is the entire first act, because there's music under everything, Phil is being forced into a preacher mode for the entire thing. And it gets old.
Right.
And I
Holy
really
Ghost
don't.
don't ever get old. The same yesterday, today, and forever.
I felt the
It's
same
really
way.
important for him to be able, when he's talking about, well, when my family did this, when they did this, to just be conversational.
Okay, you and I need to go through this and work with you on what.
So actually, what I was thinking is, we can send the choir home, and then the three of us sit together and just kind of go through this first act and say, no music here, here. A couple times you were like you would just solo piano, keep clean. I loved it. I think there are places for a bass, just a bass underscoring. We can do like single instrument things in various places. And then save the whole band thing for the church moments.
Okay,
Add the triple
Okay.
with some booze.
Sound good?
I've got a beautiful Jeep.
Like that, I need to put that wrong.
You guys also have the same question. No meeting on this stuff here?
Okay.
Can we leave stuff here? No, are they're still in the show?
Yeah, we're not back till Friday.
Oh, we got that in
Yeah, Birdie.
We got by my birthday.
Be clear, Birdie's not back till Friday.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Friday. Weird.
I know. Okay.
Yeah, but Birdie's not till Friday.
So, I think
Not-
So we're gonna be.
That's what this group is.
Ed,
we talked about the first day.
can you use the black pen?
Yes, I will be using that. Yeah, no, it's a real opportunity as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking too soon at the same time.
All right, y'all.
I think we're done with
You're
it.
right.
I have to
You're right.
Okay.
I just wanna let
Birdie's here on Friday.
guys, please, before you leave,
Yeah.
listen to your CDs. Tomorrow night, you're not here,
So you can leave your.
Myself, Bill, and Greg. okay? So I really need you guys to, let's crack it. And then when we come back, on Thursday, I can just follow me, okay? Because I know there was even some changes tonight. So,
Well, this
just follow
actually,
me.
somebody actually has to.
And I really want to,
Guys, listen up, guys.
I never want there to be a moment when you're on stage, when you're not totally involved with everything you say. Even if it's not in preaching mode.
Right.
You're in here, the first act is basically in the church, and so I really want there to be the reactions. Even if they're under your breath, it'll keep you involved, and it's gonna be much more interesting. Otherwise, people are gonna say, oh, that's the way you just finish here.
And the good news is, you're not out here on the second act, so
Right.
you only gonna give it all away for about 35 minutes.
Okay, guys,
All right.
please leave your fans, and can you grab a chair or two and just put them out by the, where they, get the tickets?
Are we using them Thursday night?
Yeah, but give them back to me. Well, that was my first one. Thank you, guys, love you, appreciate you.
What will
So Aaron isn't gonna show up.
Rashonda, right here's your phone, babe. Can she use your CD?